don't be afraid to take up space, and don't worry so much about what other people think about your art. You know, for me, when I first started painting my character Chucho, I did it for free, and I had people, even when I was giving him away for free, to stop me and be like, "This is hideous, please stop." But I believed in him so much that I didn't really care. So I just kept going and going, and he's grown into what he is today. But I feel like I've dealt with a lot of, I guess, rejection, and I think rejection is such a big part of the art world because art is so subjective, so not everyone's gonna like your artwork, and you have to just come to terms with that, and you have to be accepting that not everyone's gonna like you, and that that's perfectly okay. As long as you're proud of what you're creating, then just keep doing it, you know?
So it's been about like 3 years since I've been back here in Long Beach. And for me, it's always been a home away from home. Spent a lot of time here. We've been doing this festival for about 8 years. It's gone through a few changes in the beginning. It was like me and John Hall and Dakota, who's also here, and now Cassie runs it. And it's really a testament to these people that even through the pandemic, and through all these years, it's that they've pushed to sort of keep this project alive. Because a lot of people don't know the amount of work that goes on behind the scenes, the amount of time that's put into it, and also the artists donating their time to sort of come out here to this city to give back to it. And this year, we really gave back to a lot of community-oriented spaces. You know, we're doing 3 libraries, community gardens, the Boys and Girls Club. And so it's really important work, and we really sort of have been seeing the impact that art has on communities, the positive impact with people have been coming around every single day, thanking the artists. So I really want to applaud the artists as well as all the volunteers and the people that helped to make it happen. I know like Andrea and Cassie and the whole team that have come around and even throughout the week in the hot sun and keep working. So I would love to, with the volunteers and the artists are here, maybe you can stand up and we can applaud all the work they've been doing through this whole period. And the artists as well. I think it's really nice to have all the hard work. I've been out there myself, like trying to buff walls in the sun and clean up and everything. So it's really hot out there. So it's really thanks to them and all their hard work to give back to Long Beach and to the people of Long Beach. So without further ado, I want to bring up the 2 artists that we'll be talking to. First, I want to bring up Mr.Bbaby, who, if you didn't realize, is painting on this building right here. And next up, I want to bring up Maggie, who I've known for a long time, who was painting on Elm Street, and she finished her mural. So if you're out there if you walk by Partake, you can see a newly completed mural. It's like a fancy setup. Might end up falling asleep on this. Okay, so I think the first thing that I want to talk about is, and everyone's been asking me this question throughout the week, is your names. It was like, oh, why is she called Imagine, or why is she called Mr.Bbaby? So maybe we can start with that so we can get that question out of the way, and then move from there. Who wants to go first?
Sure. So, my name is Mr.Bbaby, so it's actually my initials. It's always been Mr., so I thought that was kind of funny. And then, so it stands for Michelle Ruby Brown Baby. So yeah, I know people are usually very curious about that. So when I first started painting, I actually didn't really want people to know that I was a girl. As I've been painting more and more, I feel like that was a disjustice. But that's just kind of what I went with. It's my initials, and that's just what I've rolled with ever since.
Cool. So my name is Imagine. I'm an artist from Nepal, and my mom and dad still live in Nepal. So basically for my career, I travel a lot and I miss my mom a lot. And, I've never really been okay with being away, even though it's been so many years, of kind of like living here and then living in Nepal. So my name is my mom's namesake. My mom's name in Nepali means imagination. And so for short, I just go by Imagine. And I felt like every time I sign her name, I feel the responsibility of like creating a good piece and kind of giving it the respect and dignity that her name deserves. And so that's where my name comes from.
You can tell people your name in Nepalese. What's your name in Nepalese?
My name is Sneha, and my name means love. Yeah, when I first started, I was introduced to graffiti by my mentor, and he was like, "What will your name?" Oh, he was like, "What will your name be? It needs to be unique, and you got to choose a name." And I was thinking of all kinds of like cool names, and then at the end I was like, "Why don't I just use my real name?" And he was like, "Nobody does that." I was like, "Oh, okay." Because I didn't grow up with graffiti, and so like I was looking at it, I was studying it as an art form from the outside, and so being introduced to the culture and everything. But yeah, so that's where the name came from.
Part of planning festivals is that you're also a travel agent. And one of the scariest things when you're being a travel agent is spelling everyone's name right and their birthdays right. And another thing that being American that's really hard is that everywhere else in the world it goes year, month, day, and then compared to month, day, year. And so I've definitely in the past screwed up. And with Imagine, it's like so much anxiety whenever I get your flight. I'm like, let me double check this name 3 times, 4 times, 5 times. I'm gonna spell it wrong. So I want to talk about sort of the history of like how you got into art and then how you got into murals and public art. And I first met Imagine in Worcester, Massachusetts, where we've been doing a festival there for almost as long as Long Beach, maybe like 6, 7 years at this point. And her work is very like calligraphic and also abstract. Maybe you could talk about sort of how you got into that style and how you got into murals and public art, and then we can have Mr.Bbaby share that same story with her own history.
Sure, yeah, actually Powwow Worcester, we were talking the other day. Powwow Worcester in 2017 was my first mural festival ever. And so like, I was so like amped to like paint at a mural festival, and let alone it being Powwow at that time. And so, let's see, how did I start? So quick rewind, I was born and raised in Nepal. And my family and my parents, everybody, my best friend still lives in Nepal. I'm like a seasonal commuter, if you please. My commute is just really long. I come here for work to the US. And so I went to college here, and after I graduated, I moved to Boston. I was working at a nonprofit, and at that time, I met my supervisor, who is now my mentor and my family. He's one of the most prominent graffiti artists in Boston. His name is Rob Gibbs. He goes by Pro Black. And he sort of introduced me to graffiti and painting big, and what graffiti is in terms of like the letters being the art form. To me, as an outsider who didn't grow up with graffiti around me at all, or murals, to me, I was really amazed. I was like, what? And of course, like, he took me, with like spray painting drills and whatnot, with like rustas and everything in the beginning, introduced me to so many artists, gave me like 2 huge bags full of like graph zines to like kind of just fill my brain with like what graffiti is and everything. And over time, I got pretty good at like painting big pieces, but then I also realized that I was missing myself in it. Like, my work was looking very much like my mentor's. Obviously I was learning from him, but I realized that, like, what is my connection with this art form other than me being like obsessed with this? I wasn't in New York, I wasn't born here, I didn't grow up seeing it. And so I thought, well, what would happen if I wrote in Nepali? I learned how to write Nepali before I learned how to write English. And so when I tried stylizing these letters, it came more naturally to me. And then after that, there was no going back. And I love painting huge because it makes me feel seen and makes my culture I feel like I'm seen in the most realist, sort of deep way that I can, in the most authentic way. And over time, I've had many jobs. I have degrees that are not very relevant to my art. And I found this job to be a job where I can be myself 100%. And this is why I'm here now.
The same question for Mr.Bbaby.
Well, I love that you just said those things. For me, I feel, I grew up with a single mom who was always working, and so a big part of my life was going to work with her and sitting around, and so I'd be bored, and so she would always buy me art supplies to be able to sketch, and that's kind of how I started to pick up my artistic gene. My mom was also a painter, so I got to witness her painting, and that always inspired me as well. And then as I got older, I went through a really bad depression, and art was what pulled me out of that, and it's kind of kept me grounded. I ended up getting pregnant, and I was going through a really bad time in my life when I found out I was pregnant, and I didn't really know what direction I wanted to go with my life, and I just started to paint, not because I wanted to do it as a job, but because it was therapy, and it helped me. And so I really wanted to make it a job, and I knew that canvases weren't going to do that for me, so I knew that I had to step outside my box or my comfort zone, and I taught myself how to spray paint and started to paint murals, and I've been very lucky and fortunate that I've been able to continue to do that, and yeah, that's how I got into it.
The one thing that I noticed about both of your work is that it pulls a lot from your own personal issues and your own culture. And I know with Mr.Bbaby, with your characters, it comes from your own heritage and your own culture as well as, you paint in Nepalese. And even with your current mural, it has a very sort of personal connection to your own history. And I would love to sort of delve into how your own personal history and your own culture sort of informs your work and how it informs your work, or why it informs you.
Sure. Do you want to go first? Okay. Culture, how it's related to my work. Yeah, so I write in Nepali, and so the inspiration really came initially from graffiti, but then what I love about graffiti is that you're looking at letters as an image, and I really love that. The concept is amazing to me still till this day. And then when I think of Nepali, growing up, I hated writing Nepali. I hated writing Nepali. I hated reading Nepali, and it was I wasn't good at it at all, writing and reading very fast. I wasn't good at it. I was better at English. And I realized over time that looking back, there weren't a lot of Nepali books for children. So I remember my first sort of arts learning experience was from my mom, who was translating Nepali books, English books to children's books. And she was drawing those same pictures, but bigger, so that we could read it. And the writings, the textbooks that we had as first and second graders, the text on it was the same as you would see on the newspaper. And that was the same as a movie poster. That was the same as an ad. And so imagine a 7-year-old trying to read a newspaper for a textbook. And that's intimidating. And I have dyslexia and dyscalculia, which is dyslexia for numbers. So I look at the books and it's just kind of swimming everywhere like spaghetti, and I'm just I never enjoyed reading it. And then I also started researching into letters, where Nepali letters come from. And Nepali letters come from a script called Devanagari script, which is also the same script written, Sanskrit is also written in the same script. And Sanskrit goes back to like the 7th century, so it's one of the oldest forms of writing. And so here I am, you know, as an adult, ashamed that I like hated writing my letters so much. There's so much to be proud of. But nobody really told me that. Like there are other things about my culture that I was proud of, but I did not know about the letters and how it's so deep-rooted in not just my ancestors, but the physical location of the country and the continent and its history and how it's connected to the present. And then I started noticing that the letters exist on like temples, on inscriptions, and then I started researching that more, and so next thing I knew, my hobby was like sending emails to museums in the US asking them if I can visit their storage unit to look at like 14th century Nepali manuscripts. And like I started just like obsessing over them, like looking at it. And so I grew, you know, I was thinking like, there's like Arabic calligraphy, there's Japanese calligraphy, there's Chinese calligraphy, like Old English is written like so beautifully. Like why isn't this letter form that is so ancient and so important and tells the history of like more than a continent, like why is there no appreciation for the aesthetics of those letters? And I was like, maybe if I do this, like I wasn't out to help people with their cultural appreciation, but like it was a way for me to like mend my sort of past in terms of like, why don't we start this chapter in writing these letters and showing people that like it's beautiful, look, you know? And a lot of times when you're from like a small country like Nepal is like the size of like Arkansas, okay? And it's really tiny. But like we have more than 150 languages spoken within the country. So when somebody meets a person from Nepal, they're like amused. And you know, I get questions like, oh, does everybody from Nepal look like you, talk like you, does everybody's hair like that, blah, blah. It's like hard to answer a question like that because the country is very diverse. And it's the same, you know, I guess we'd feel the same way here if someone asked you like, oh, is it always hot in the US? Like today it looks so hot. You know, it's hard to answer questions like that. And so over time I realized that when I was writing in Nepali, I could authentically say that this is Nepali, and I felt like I was representing my culture in the most authentic way I knew how. And so that's sort of the connection between those two.
So I was born and raised in Chula Vista, which is the border city close to Tijuana, by a Puerto Rican mother. So I got and actually my neighbor was from Spain, so I got like the best of all worlds. My neighbor's the one who taught me how to actually write in Spanish. It's always been a big part of who I am. Even like all my friends growing up, we were Hispanic, and I'd always go to Tijuana with my grandma and see all the art, and it was always really inspiring to me to see. And what I noticed growing up is that there wasn't really that many. I feel like times are changing now, and I'm glad to see more of it. But there wasn't a lot of representation for my culture, especially with like toys and dolls and stuff that I used to play with. And most of the work that I create is it's geared towards children. But my ultimate goal is actually to write a children's book and create a toy line and kind of go more in that direction. And so when I started painting, that's just what I was naturally drawn to because it's what I've always been surrounded by and what I've always loved. So that's why I depict a lot of, I use like this character named Maria, which is inspired by a Mexican ragdoll that you find in Mexico. And I use her a lot, mainly because I always wanted one of those dolls, but my mom would never let me have one. So I just paint her over and over obsessively now. But yeah, I think it's really important to provide representation, and especially with children. I feel like there's not that many like murals. Well, I don't want to say that there's not that many, but I feel like a lot of murals are geared specifically towards children, and especially Latino children. And so it's something that I really wanted to provide. So, yes.
So knowing that about sort of your work and how it connects to your history, maybe we can talk about also the murals that you're doing here in Long Beach. You know, these murals essentially are gifts to this community, to this city, to these people. And it'd be great so that people know like what those murals are about, so when they do go by it, they can sort of talk about it or get a deeper meaning of what's behind it.
Sure, yeah. I mean, I've had so much fun painting this mural just because murals to me are a way to share my culture in the most authentic way I know how. So when the building itself and the wall itself has a significance and I have a sort of connection with it, it means much more to me. And so the building that I painted, it's on 456 Elm Ave. And so the building is a test kitchen. It's like a ghost kitchen where different people can rent out the kitchen and like cook their things and run their business and whatnot. And I think, and I love food. I'm always texting people like, let's get food. And so it just food warms my heart. I think it's such a cool way to connect with people. And so when I found out the building that I'm painting is a test kitchen, I was like, how do I paint something that's relevant to them and I can also tell a part of my story? And so the building you'll see it's sort of like a yellow orangish color background. And so I thought, what is sort of the heart of cooking for me and what I learned from my mom. And so turmeric is the base spice for most South Asian cooking, and you just have to have it. And so I chose this color that's like this orangish yellow, that's the color of turmeric. So usually if you buy turmeric at I don't know, Whole Foods, it's yellow, yellow, but and I didn't recognize it the first time I came to the US and I was looking for turmeric because turmeric that I grew up with, my aunt would grind it and seal it and then I'd bring it here. And so it's this dirty sort of orangish, brownish, yellow color. And so I wanted to make that color the wall, and then I thought of one of my favorite dishes, and it's called dal. It's a yellow lentil soup. And so on the wall, I wrote the ingredients of dal. And so I feel it's, dal is sort of a basic of Nepali food. You have rice, and you have a lentil soup, and then you have a curry. So that's sort of your base. And yeah, I wanted to share with people the ingredients of it. It's got a lot of garlic, ginger, it's got fenugreek seed, I think that's what it's called. I just learned the name in English, because I was like, what is it called? I don't know how to pronounce it, but that, and then ghee, which is clarified butter, of course, yellow lentils, water, and love. So those are the words that I've written on it over and over again. I called my mom to ask for a recipe, and yeah, so, kind of sharing part of my food, and I imagine that's what people will do in the kitchen as well, and I think it's a cool sort of little bit to learn about, Nepali food, and then kind of draw similarities and differences between, food that you grew up with, and, so that's what the wall is about.
I just want to say that's really, really cool. When I found that out, I was like, that's dope.
Usually I read a mantra, but this time I
I love it. So the question is my wall.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's basically my Latino twist on Gulliver's Travels. I don't know how many of you guys saw it outside, but in my work, I've been touching a lot on emotion. I want to create a book that is kind of like an alphabet book for children, and I've touched on anxiety, depression, things that are a little bit taboo to talk about, but I feel like we all feel them, and so I feel like they should be celebrated. And so that's why I know it's like a sad scene of him crying, but I just feel like it's so relatable. And I'm actually creating a series for a show I'm gonna have at Think Space next month. And it kind of tells, so it tells the rest of that story. Essentially, the Maria dolls, Chucho stumbles in their town and accidentally, because of his massive size, breaks some of the houses, and then the Marias come out and they're gonna tie him up and take him for all he's worth and get all his candy out, because Chucho's a piñata for those of you guys who don't. So that's the next scene. But yeah.
So for some, you might know that me and Imagine worked on a project together in Kathmandu, Nepal, in her hometown. That was at a school called Koseli, and it was a school that kind of catered to like underserved children, homeless children, and what they would do is they would bring kids in and feed them, and then once they capture their attention and get them there, they would teach them. And these schools out there in Kathmandu tend to be very uninspiring and forlorn. Like they're not the most inspiring places for children. And myself, Imagine, a bunch of artists, Keratos and the Cryptic and Lowering YS, a bunch of us all, they all went out there and painted the entire school, exterior, interior of the classrooms, etc. And I know that supporting children and educating children, taking care of them is a big part of what you do, because you're also part of another organization out there. Maybe you can talk more about that and even your experience with when we did that project together in Kathmandu.
Sure, yeah. Man, I was so amped when I saw Pao Nepal Instagram pop up. I was like, who is running this? I want to be part of it. So yeah, that was actually one of the most sort of memorable projects that I got to do, and it was so cool to be able to share sort of my hometown with all these artists that I looked up to. It was just unreal. So some background, in 2013 I opened the Children's Art Museum in Nepal. The museum was established to help children develop 21st century skills that most Nepali schools don't really provide, so like things like critical thinking, and problem solving and leadership skills. Like these aren't things that most schools teach in Nepal. It's very much a rote-based learning sort of curriculum in Nepal. And so kind of growing up, I was like the problem child. Like I almost got suspended from school. Like I got suspended from school so many times. They were like so close to expelling me. It was crazy. And like I grew up thinking I was like stupid and like all these things, and like I was told that. But in retrospect, I realized that I didn't have the space to like express myself mentally, but also physically. There wasn't a space where I could like just do whatever I wanted and it was okay. Like not be like crazy, but like make art without a teacher telling you if it's right or wrong. So that made me think about art as a means of expression versus a skill set. And I think for kids and most people, art might be most useful seeing it as a way of expressing yourself rather than having a right or wrong, just as a means of expression. So once I was in the US for a few years, I realized that children's museums are this like thing, like this entity, this institute, where children can go look at art, make art. There's an education department, and like all of this made so much sense to me. I was like, we need to have a children's museum in Nepal. And I think like a lot of people are like, oh, you're so great, you did this and that. But I think like deep inside, it was really a way to mend my heart. I hated school, so it was so traumatized. Like I went to one of the best schools, yet it wasn't good enough. So imagine most of Nepali kids going to school and just, not having a great experience, hating it, not enjoying learning. Like what happens when you don't enjoy learning? Like you won't read, you won't, do all these things. And then as an adult, your brain, you're just looking for people to tell you right or wrong answers. And you can't tell right from wrong. So I really wanted to create a space where kids can just be kids and do their thing. And so the Children's Museum was established in 2013, and we've worked with over 35,000 kids at this point. Due to the pandemic, we're sort of at a hiatus right now, but Power Nepal took place in 2018, I believe. 2017 or 2018. And so when Power Nepal was happening in Kathmandu, my hometown, I saw an opportunity, or we saw an opportunity to partner. And so there were staff from the museum who worked with us at the school to sort of develop these workshops for the kids. Because this is the thing, right? Like, you can work with kids, but working with kids is also a professional's job. And so not everybody can work with kids. Like, I think that's important to sort of point out. And so we saw it important, okay, we're painting at a school, but to work with the kids, maybe professionals should do it. And so we had arts educators who had lots of experience working with kids. And then, you know, the artists are painting their classrooms, the kids get to interact with the artists. And so it was just a full sort of wholesome package of like this wonderful experience that the artists were having, the kids were having, and then the museum. You know, for powwow, whenever there are different powwows all over the world, they find it important to partner with the local organization so that the main work is done by the local organization, because nothing can really be imported directly into a country that started from not that country, right? So like, if it started in Hawaii, you try to do the exact same thing in Nepal, it won't work. It's the same thing with the museum too. The museum is an adaptation of the concept, but the locals really need to accept it for it to be successful. And I think with Power Nepal, that's what we did. And yeah, long story short, I think that's why I have like a deep connection with this mural festival, and I'm really honored to be here.
So as we sort of continue that with Mr.Bbaby, I know earlier you said you were a single mother, you're a parent. And I'm also a parent as well with two girls of my own. And I always get asked, like, how do you balance that? Like, how do you balance being a parent and with trying to become a professional artist? Because trying to become an artist in and of itself is very difficult. It takes up a lot of time. It's almost, you have to be fully dedicated to it. So maybe you can talk about that. I know that there's also artists here, young artists here that are like, I want to be an artist, but I also want to start a family. Like, how do I do that? And it's all very much possible, but we have sort of different ways of going about it. And we can sort of share like how, you know, you balance that with your daughter, and also, you know, how being a parent informs your work as well.
Yeah, so I'm not gonna lie and say that it's easy. It's definitely challenging. There's a lot of times where I have to be away, and it's hard on me and it's hard on her, but ultimately she's the whole reason why I do this. She saved my life, essentially. Before I had her, I was a drug addict, and then I had her and I got my life together. And so everything I do it because I have faith in what I'm doing, and I just know that it's gonna pay off. And so I do it with, you know, with her in mind, even though I know it's hard being away, but I know that in the long run, it's all gonna make sense. I'm really fortunate because I have a family who's extremely supportive of me, and that loves my daughter, and so I have a lot of family support. Yeah, that's how I've been able to kind of juggle it. But I'm so busy all the time that I definitely, it doesn't come easy. I definitely carry a lot of guilt towards that. But I try to involve her as much as I can. I always FaceTime her, or if she can, show up to my murals. I try to bring her to my murals. I try to show her what I'm doing, more so just to teach her that, you know, that anything that she sets her mind to, that it's possible. And so I never thought that I would be here, that I would be painting murals for a living, or I never thought that. And so it's just cool to be to try to give her that example, to show her that it is possible. And you know, a lot of my work is very children-based because of her. I always ask for her approval, and it's pretty cool because I get like the front row like critic, and she doesn't lie. She tells me if it sucks or whatever. So it's really cool, and luckily she's a big supporter and she loves Chucho, so it's good. It's good.
I think the same thing for my kids too. Like my youngest, like hates my work. And then my oldest is also super brutally honest. Like she said, "Oh no, like I don't like that's super ugly, Dad. Like I don't like that." Or she'll tell me that she likes this thing. Like they're not even like they're just like trolls, really. Like they're not critics. Yeah, it's not positive or constructive at all. So I would love to open this up to the audience because you know, to sort of if anyone else has questions to ask. Imagine a Mr.Bbaby, just raise your hands. If not, I have more questions, but you know, if anyone has questions, we'd love to hear what people have in mind.
I'd like to know where in the world you both have painted murals.
So the question is, where in the world have you painted? I know some of Imagine ones.
Okay. It's been so long since we like traveled. I think I would say like my favorite place I've painted, one of the favorite might be in Cambodia. Sorry. Yeah, because Cambodia is so similar to Nepal, but different at the same time. I could go into the history of it, but like that was really exciting to paint there. Yeah.
You know, it's crazy because when I first started painting murals, I never thought that it would take me anywhere as far as traveling goes, and so I've been doing a lot of traveling, which is just cool. I feel like I've painted a lot in Mexico, but I guess the craziest place that I've been to answer your question, is Australia. Like I never thought that I would go to Australia ever, and so it was cool to get like flown out there to paint a mural. Yeah.
Where in Australia did you paint?
It was in Sydney.
Sydney.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was an organization of all women artists, and we all flew and painted a mural for a community center out there. So it was really cool.
So I guess the follow-up to that question is, where do you want to paint?
Japan.
Japan. You gotta open that country up then.
I want to paint like in my old high school. I want to like make a comeback. Yeah, I left feeling like I never want to come back here ever again. But like I want to paint like this. Yeah, there's a huge building there and I really want to paint it. And yeah, I don't know. Maybe they'll invite me. Maybe I'll pick something, but. I don't know, I keep thinking about that because it's, you know, there's so many like connections to that place and for the future kids in that place, and it's my hometown and everything, so I wish I could paint that building there.
We need to bring back Nepal, Project Nepal again.
I would love to. I'd be down to
We've been talking about it for years, actually.
really.
Yeah.
Well, the pandemic needs to die down a little bit because a lot of people don't have access to vaccines still, and the people who do have access to vaccines, they're not educated, aware enough to get it. So only like the educated few have vaccines. So when people get COVID, they're still getting very sick. And right now there's yellow fever going on in Nepal. So I think once those subside, in a year or so, I think we can pick it back up. And I think the city looks so different than it did before, even when the Power Nepal was happening. That I think there's lots of opportunities to paint and educate and kind of make people aware of, you know, the power of street art and what it can do.
How is Caselli doing out there?
Koseli was already a bit in trouble at the time we started. They weren't sure if they could keep the school grounds, and so we're not sure if they were able to keep it or if they were able to handle the pandemic area. So we're not sure, we're not quite sure. What we do know is that when we were there, we had lots of cake and the kids were awesome and the kids had fun with us. And
Yeah, I
then
remember
it was-
the,
yeah,
the shoes, when we got the shoes donated.
yeah.
So what we did was we had a children's shoe brand donate shoes to the kids. And none of the kids knew their shoe size. So the teacher measured all their feet. And we sent those measurements to the shoe company, and they kind of matched it to the shoe sizes, and they shipped all those boxes of shoes, which got stuck in customs, and we couldn't get it out because they
Bribe somebody to go get it.
yeah, but what was interesting that we didn't think about was that all the kids wanted bigger shoe sizes because they might never get new shoes.
Yeah.
So then I talked to that shoe company again. I said, if we do it again, we need to have that sort of mentality and maybe provide more sizes or bigger sizes.
Yeah, I think that or like maybe some books or like art supplies would be
Yeah.
super cool, I think. But yes, I'm super down to help organize something. And another cool part of the Powwow festivals is that the artists always get an orientation of the city. And so I can't wait to show my friends where to get like the best, the poly food or the bows or whatever. So in a selfish way, we want to do it.
One of the things that we struggle with doing projects in those cities is that sponsors don't like to sponsor those projects because they don't have a market presence there. So that project was particularly difficult to find any funding for, so we actually had to cover that out of pocket. But at the end, it was totally worth it. It was like one of my favorite projects to sort of, I didn't get a chance to go myself. I just helped to organize it and watch in jealousy as you guys were doing everything, and I was getting reports and updates from everyone. So that's why I want to bring it back so I can go as well. So why Japan? Like why?
I mean, there's a lot of places I want to paint, but when you said that, I think it's just like the top place that I've always wanted to travel to. It just seems like so magical and like, I know that they have like such a love for just like that kawaii style. It's so cute. I just like their art. The art out there is so inspiring to me, and so I would just like to go and see it for myself. But it's not the only place. But yeah.
We do a project in Japan, so
Nice.
except that it's still kind of like locked right now. But when it opens up, do something, bring more people out.
I just want to hear from you guys about what you think the lifespan is of a mural, because do you feel like it's a sacred thing that can't ever be painted over? Do you feel like it's gonna, has a certain amount of time? I think about the murals on the 101 is it the 101 freeway in Hollywood, the ones they put up during the Olympics, the 1986 Olympics, and they keep getting painted over and then they keep repairing them and they keep doing the same. Should they live forever, or are you okay with them having a natural evolution in which they turn into something else?
I feel like street art is, it's not meant to be permanent. It's on the street for everybody to enjoy, for the community to enjoy for a time being. I think it would be a little bit foolish to assume that your mural's gonna last forever just because there's elements and businesses change, people come in, there's so many changes with neighborhoods, and so it's only likelihood that your mural will eventually get painted over. But I would say, ideally, I would say it would last like a decade, but that's very rarely the case. So yeah.
I 1000% agree. I think once we create the work, for me, it's kind of like handing it over to the neighborhood that it's in. For me, the process is what's really exciting, to make huge body gestures and create this visual language and share it with the community and learn about the community, and that's the process. And I really enjoy that. And then after it's done, you kind of hand it over to not just the neighborhood, but to the elements. And if the neighborhood doesn't want it, then it disappears. Or if the neighborhood is expanding. Like most of my murals in Nepal don't exist anymore because the city is growing so fast. Like walls are being torn down, businesses closed down and so on. So I can't control that. And if I'm super attached to them, I would be very heartbroken. So I just keep trying to paint every time I go. But yeah, kind of. Questions way back there.
Yeah, I'm gonna go to the back right here. Yeah.
So there's actually two questions, one for me. At what point did you feel that you were able to confidently say that you are an artist and this is what you do? I know a lot of people suffer from, what's the term? Imposter syndrome. And as a young artist, I'm still trying to get over that. And seeing you and hearing you guys speak, it's very inspiring. So I'm curious to know, at what point did you guys feel confident with that? And then my friend over here also has a question. So,
With that, I guess it kind of ties. My question is more specifically for women of color creatives. Like, what piece of advice do you have for women of color creatives that didn't grow up with seeing other women of color creatives like that are pursuing their passion and like not only pursuing it but also like making a living off of it, or are either thinking of switching careers and wanting to like join into that, or like younger women, like girls that don't even know that that's an option for them. Like, what kind of piece of advice do you have for them?
okay, I'll answer the second question first. I think just don't be afraid to take up space, and don't worry so much about what other people think about your art. For me, when I first started painting my character Chucho, I did it for free, and I had people, even when I was giving him away for free, to stop me and be like, "This is hideous, please stop." But I believed in him so much that I didn't really care. So I just kept going and going, and he's grown into what he is today. But I feel like I've dealt with a lot of, rejection. And I think rejection is such a big part of the art world because art is so subjective. So not everyone's gonna like your artwork, and you have to just come to terms with that. And you have to be accepting that not everyone's gonna like you, and that that's perfectly okay. As long as you're proud of what you're creating, then just keep doing it, Do you want to answer the first question? Or...
First question was,
Imposter syndrome.
imposter. Like when did you feel like you could call yourself an artist? Did you ever feel like that you couldn't, or that?
Yeah, I definitely did. I always thought I felt like corny saying, "Oh, I'm an artist," I don't know. I mean, I still get imposter syndrome all the time, but I definitely, I don't remember like one defining moment where I felt like I was an artist. I think it's mainly just, I know I'm an artist because, I'm creating, I'm really consistent about it too. So I guess I don't really question it anymore, but I think also, I guess to backtrack on that, I don't think like just because you don't create every day, you're not an artist either, which is something that I feel a lot of people might feel. I think we're all artists. We all have our own talents, our own creativity in our own way, whether it's painting or whatever it may be. And I think that's a really hard question to answer, so that's the best I got.
I agree. I think calling yourself an artist is totally up to you. So to like answer your question, both kind of at the same time. I grew up in Nepal where like art is still a luxury. So like I grew up I didn't meet I didn't meet an artist till I came to the US, till I left home at like 17. So like artist being like a job wasn't even in my mind. It wasn't a dream because I didn't know it existed. So it took me a while to kind of define what an artist is in my mind, for myself. I think it was like way after I was like like some people knew my work and I was selling work and stuff like that. But then I meet like proud parents who introduced their 5-year-old to me. They're like, my daughter's an artist too, and I'm like, yes, she is. Like, so it really is up to you, like what, you know, there's no like firm definition on what an artist really is. And then for the second question, what was it again?
Piece of advice to women of color creatives.
Oh, I got you. The concept of a starving artist is not sexy. It sucks. So if you're gonna be an artist and you wanna do this full time, like make sure your bases are covered. Like in all seriousness, make sure you can pay your rent, make sure you have health insurance, make sure you can buy your own groceries. Once you're stable, like keep making art while you're doing that. So don't let everything go and be like, I'm gonna be an artist and I'm gonna live homelessly and sign up to be homeless. And like that's not cool. Like take care of yourself first. When your foundation is strong and you can support yourself and your art like eventually picks up, then you can slowly let go of whatever else you're doing and then go into art full time. I think there's this romanticized version of like being an artist, and I totally don't support that. I'm like, from halfway around the world, I don't want to sign up to be like unprepared for life, you know? So, and as a woman of color, like, you just gotta take care of yourself first. So I would really hone in on that. And then the other thing is, being an artist is also, and this is like a word that like a lot of people don't like, but being an artist, if you want to support yourself, you're also business at the same time, right? So make sure you know the basics of like accounting, business, marketing, things like that. Like, you know, talk about your work, write about your work. That's so important. Like making the work, honestly, is just half the work, half the job. Telling the story about it is the other half. So like these exercises are important to do as well. So I would say like if you want to do it as a job, like treat it seriously like a job. Like it has all these different facets to it, and you know, you just over time have to like master it. So I would, and then the more prepared you are, the less people take advantage of you. There's a lot of people who will take advantage of you, not just in the art world, but in the world in general. So the more like armor you have of like being educated and aware of like what your worth is, what your finances look like, what your work is about, when you know that, like that's how you can like carry yourself strong and you can be yourself and kind of navigate through the world. And imposter syndrome won't really exist when you like have these bases covered. So yeah.
I like to add too, like, you know, don't be afraid to reach out to artists that you look up to. You know, with artists, like it's a small industry, like we all kind of like know each other or know of each other. And even when I was coming up, I would reach out to people that I looked up to meet up and just ask questions or get mentorship or advice. You know, a lot of artists that I looked up to coming up are actually like my friends now. So no, definitely don't be afraid to do that either.
Yes, I agree 100% because there's no right way to become an artist. Like the path, your trajectory to becoming a successful artist, there's no one set. You can't read a book and like be like, okay, I follow these, and you know, it's really like a personalized sort of trajectory that you're going to create for yourself, and everyone's different. So whenever I meet friends from all over the world who are doing different arts, like we love to talk shop. We want to learn from each other. Also, having mentors is really like important and helpful. So you know, when you find artists that you look up to, like get in touch with them. Like Instagram's so easy now, and just like yeah.
Or even during these festivals where you guys are here in person, you know, like go to the walls, meet the artists, you know, volunteer. You know, and that's a great way to sort of meet artists and even get one-on-one skill like lessons sometimes from artists where they're like, hey, you know, I want to do this is how I do it. You know, they'll give you tips and tricks on how to do different things. I want to take one last question from Seja. Seja has been really supportive of our festivals and our projects since the very beginning. When we were doing our shows at the Long Beach Museum of Art, like she was she really helped to pull a lot of those exhibitions together, and without her, honestly, I don't think we could even make those happen. And over the years, she's continued to be supportive. So I want to take one last question from Seja, who's always been so wonderful to us.
When you both were talking about your names, imagine, I love the connection you have with your roots, not only, like you said, in your own culture, but to generations before you and 7th century. I mean, that's amazing. And Mr.Bbaby, so I understand your question. Your name is your name. But you made a reference about the Mr. and how you were attached to that for the fact of being a public artist. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so I mean, I feel like I guess going into the art world, I definitely didn't really know of very many women artists. I do now, but back then I didn't, and I didn't really, I mean, it still is a very male-dominated field, and I thought I was at a disadvantage by saying that I was a woman mainly because, you know, growing up, I always wanted to paint large. And I remember my friends, or I shouldn't say friends, but people that I was associated with that did graffiti would always be like, don't do that. That's not for girls. They said, you're gonna look like a groupie. That's what they would tell me. And so I never painted. And it's always something I wanted to do. And I stayed away from it because of that. And so when I went into it, I thought that if I said that, or if I had a boy name, that I would get more respect and more work, and so that's kind of why I decided on that. But as I've learned and been more involved in this industry, I think that it wasn't, I mean, it's my initials, so I'm not going to change it, but it is like a little bit of a disservice because I'm really proud that I'm a woman artist and that, you know, there still isn't that many of us, and so and there's more women starting to do it, which I love to see that, and so but that's the reason why I originally chose that name.
To talk about that more, I mean, both Imagine and Mr.Bbaby are here using heavy machinery painting giant walls. You know, like when I went to Imagine's wall when I first got here, I was like, man, this is like for me like an anxiety wall. Like I personally, like I have like a fear of heights, so I hate going that high. But I always find myself on a lift, high in the air, and I'm always doing that still, even though I don't like doing that. And so, but then she comes here and she's like, yeah, no problem, I'm gonna go up there. I'm like, man, I can't. Girls do better. But yeah, I want to say, you know, thank you so much for everyone for being here tonight to listen to the stories of both Imagine and Mr.Bbaby. And definitely go around and check out the murals that we're doing all around town, as well as the murals that we've done in the past. We've been doing this for like 8 years now. And really thank you to everyone here, the volunteers, the crew, the team, everyone that's been involved all these years to sort of like keep these projects alive, all the support from this community, from this city, and of course to all the artists that are out here, you know, gifting and sharing their work. So, you know, thank you to you all from the bottom of my heart. Thank you.